अस्सलाम वालेकुम। बस ठीक है। हेलो। Assalamu alaikum. I think you can all hear me very well. So, and I hope you're all doing fine at your home. Maybe it has got little boring, but what we can do? It's better to be safe than sorry. So, I don't know when your classes, regular classes, would be starting, but I think it would take another month or more than that. So, we have to stay with this online system. Let's start with our lecture today. I'm already a little late. Before this lecture, I will let you know that you have a test with of special surgery on this weekend. I think on Saturday. That test is on abdominal surgery part 1. That means if we go and see the Bailey and Love book, it would be starting from the abdomen, like the chapter where the abdominal examination and history taking is, and then the hernias, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, liver, spleen, gallbladder, bile ducts, up till there. I think it's up to chapter 67. So that test would be on Saturday. So be prepared for that. And your last test with us, which was cardiovascular and breast endocrine, that was also done, and its result is already given by us. I think you have seen that result. So anyway, we will start with this lecture today. This is the lecture is on the abdominal surgery part 2. Actually, this is the last topic of the abdominal surgery, and somehow this is in my schedule this week. So we'll discuss about this. Anal canal disorders. In our surgical practice, this anal canal problems are very frequently encountered. A lot of patients would come with various anal canal problems. There are many surgical diseases which affect this anal canal, but I will discuss only the common and more important things. Let's see whether we can finish this topic in one lecture, or otherwise I will need another one. So I'll start with this. You all know what the anal canal is. So I think we would be discussing at least these four diseases in our lecture. One is hemorrhoids, which is also called piles, or in our common language, it is called bawasir. The other one is called anal fissure. And then the third and fourth topic would be anorectal abscesses and fistula in ano. These would be covered in our lecture. So we'll start with the anatomy first. If you could see this picture on the right side of your screen, this is a simplified picture. We'll just have a look on this picture first, and then we can see the detailed picture. The anus or anal canal is actually the termination of the intestine, the gastrointestinal tract. It terminates its lower end and this lower part, which is about 3 to 4 centimeter in length area, is called anal canal. It is continuation of the large bowel and then the rectum and then the anal canal. But there are some differences between rectum and anal canal, and because of that, this is a separate area. If we see it, it is about 3 to 4 centimeter in length. This is the inner part, and this is the outer exterior part. And in between this is the anal canal. 3 to 4 centimeter in length. It starts from inside. It starts at the dentate line, and it ends at the anus or the outer opening on the in the buttocks. If you see, there is one endothelium, then a muscular layer, and there is no peritoneum in this. So that's also one difference between the rectum and the anal canal, that there is no serosa here, only mucosa and the muscle, but there is no serosa. In rectum, there is mucosa, then the muscle, and then there is a serosa. So, and it is actually encircled all around by sphincters. The sphincters are of two types, external sphincter and the internal sphincter. The external sphincter and the internal sphincter, they work to control the passage of feces and flatus or air at a suitable time. And this external sphincter is controlled by us. It is a voluntary muscle, while the internal sphincter is an autonomic supply or involuntary muscle. It is not controlled by us. So these two are the sphincters. This is the mucosa, this is the muscle layer, and outside there is ischiorectal fossa on both sides. And the ischiorectal fossa is filled of fat. So this is a gross anatomical picture. Rectum, continuation in the anal canal. Anal canal starts at the dentate line and at the anus outside. There is this endothelium or inside mucosa. Then there are two muscles. One is internal sphincter and then there is external sphincter. Internal sphincter is involuntary or autonomic, and the external sphincter is voluntary or somatic. And outside there is ischiorectal fossa. This is the gross anatomy. If we see it in a little detail, actually this anatomy is very important to understand the pathophysiology of common diseases. If that picture, similar picture, if we see it in a little detail, we'll again, this is rectum, then the anal canal here. This is the dentate line or pectinate line, sometimes it is said, this area. And these are the muscles. This is the internal sphincter. This is the external sphincter. This is the anal skin. Outside fat is the ischiorectal fossa fat. And this is mucosa inside. This is mucosa inside. This is muscular layer. And this area is submucosa, where you can see these blue dilated vessels. And this area is called anal cushion, this area, this blue. The submucosa is little thick and swollen in this part, and it contains a lot of vessels, and these areas are called anal cushions. And once these cushions are enlarged, they become hemorrhoids. Okay. Then this dentate line is actually the mucosa of the rectum. It ends here, and there are some semilunar kind of valves here, and they form the dentate line. And in these valves, there are the opening of the anal glands ducts. This is anal gland which is present between the muscles, and it acts as a lubricant. It secretes some secretions so that this area is lubricated a bit, and the secretion goes through this into this area. So this is anal gland, and this is out. If we come out of the mucosa, and there is another difference in the mucosa. This mucosa of the rectum is a columnar epithelium, and while the mucosa in the anal canal is squamous in nature, and there is this squamocolumnar junction where there is a transition from columnar to the squamous. Okay, what else you need to know? You need to know something else as well. This these internal sphincter, this muscle is in continuation with the circular muscle of the rectum. This is a continuation of the circular muscle of the rectum, and it becomes the internal sphincter of the anal canal. This is involuntary. While the external sphincter is coming from the this levator ani muscle, which is present on the floor of the pelvis, and it becomes into the comes down and it expands here sort of thing, and encircles the anal canal and becomes the external sphincter. This is all a voluntary muscle or a skeletal muscle. This is a smooth muscle. Okay. Something important here is this squamous epithelium or endothelium is quite sensitive and it is very painful. So anal canal conditions are very painful, but the rectum mucosa is columnar mucosa. It is not that painful. It is supplied by the autonomic nerve. So distal 1/3 is supplied by the skin, nerves and vessels and veins, and the upper part of the anus and the rectum, they are supplied by the autonomic nerves. So this is also clinically important that the anal canal conditions become very painful because they are supplied by the somatic or the skin nerves. Okay, so we move forward. The anal canal conditions, when you do examine a patient for anal canal conditions, you need to do a anorectal examination. And the anorectal examination is done by similarly by inspection and then by digital rectal examination, in which you put your finger after lubricating it into the anus and the rectum of the patient. And for examination of the anus and rectum, the position of the patient is very important. It can be done in various positions. One position is like a knee elbow position, just similar to when somebody is prostrating in prayers or a sajda type of position. The other position is a knee chest position. It's also the same. And the third position is a left lateral or right lateral position, in which you ask the patient to take turn on to the side and then you fold the legs and then you examine. And also the examination can be done in the lithotomy position, just like in a gynae ops examination, in a lithotomy position, in which patient is lying on its back and lifting the legs above and flexing the hip and knee. So the easiest and the most convenient position for the patient is actually left lateral position. And this is what is being drawn here, in which patient, you're standing onto the left side of the patient and you ask on the right side of the patient and you ask the patient to take a left turn. Patient is turned to the left and facing on the left side away from you, and the hip is flexed, the knee is flexed, and you ask the patient to come closer to you, and then you can see the anal canal here. Okay. So what you have to do, you need to, of course, wear some gloves, and gently you need to separate the buttocks of the patient and you examine the natal cleft and the anal verge. Anal verge is the outer end of the anal canal. And on inspection, you look for any abnormality in this area, like any rash is there, any blood is there, any pus is there, any discharge, any swelling, warts, fissure, hemorrhoid, which is visible on inspection outside. And once you find any abnormality, you need to describe it. And how you describe it? You describe this anus in a clock-like position. So that if you tell me that there is a lesion at, let's say, 9 o'clock position, so I could imagine and I could see in my mind what you mean and what is the location of it without seeing the patient myself. So this anus or the anal verge is actually just like a clock. 12 o'clock is given anteriorly towards vagina in female and scrotum in male, and 6 o'clock is given posteriorly towards sacrum, and then 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock on either side. So this is how you describe. For example, you would say there is a swelling at 3 o'clock position, and there is a fistula at 6 o'clock position, and fissure at 12, whatever. So one can easily describe in this way. Okay. Let's see. On inspection, you could see this type of thing. Either it could be normal, but you could see the pathologies, and the pathologies like this. If you see this picture, which is on the to the top left of the screen, you see there are 3 swellings, and if you see the fingers gently separating the buttocks, and you can see 3 swellings, which is not normal. One is a bigger swelling, the other is the smaller than that, and the third one is the smallest. And in this position, as I can understand, this is 12 o'clock onto the top north. This is 12 o'clock. This is 6 o'clock. So this is, of course, ranging from 2 to 5 o'clock. But mainly it's the 3 o'clock swelling, which is quite big. This is 3 o'clock swelling, which is quite big. And this is a 7 o'clock swelling. And this is 11 o'clock swelling. So these are 3, 7, and 11 o'clock. There are 3 swellings, which are at 3, 7, and 11 o'clock position. And you can see this swelling, there is some bluish touch and some traces of old clotted blood probably, and this is some fresh blood, and there is some erosion on the skin. And this is actually hemorrhoid, a classical hemorrhoid, and on classical positions, 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 11, and this one probably also had some bleeding recently. These two might not have bled, but this one had some bleeding. So classical hemorrhoids on inspection would be like this if they are quite big. Then we come to the picture onto the right top side of your screen. And in this, if you see, there is no swelling. This is the anus, actually, anal verge. And there is no swelling as we have seen in the previous picture. And all around it's okay, but you can see on, this is again, I will explain. This is 12 o'clock on the top, 6 o'clock on the bottom, on the side 3 and 9. So there is this ulcer. At what position? It is 6 o'clock position. Hello, I think sound is okay, I hope. So in this, we were talking about this picture on the top. At 6 o'clock position, you can see there is an ulcer here at 6 o'clock position. And this is a longitudinal ulcer. It is actually a longitudinal tear in the mucosa of the anus or the anal canal. And this is called anal fissure, And this tear and this mucosa is actually, after tearing from here, is rolled down, and it is sort of accumulated at the lower end of this ulcer. So this is the roll down mucosa, and this is the tear, which is called anal fissure, and this is sentinel pile. So the anal fissure with sentinel pile. Then you come to the third picture. If you see this picture at the bottom of the screen, you can see this is anus. This is 12 o'clock. This is 6 o'clock on this side. This is an operative picture, actually. And patient is probably lying prone because of these buttock folds I can see. So I can only guess that if these are buttock folds, that means this, and this is the back on the top. So back side is 12, this side is 6 actually. Okay. Anyway, in this picture, you can see 2 swellings here. One is here and the other one is here. And there's some fresh blood. So these 2 are probably hemorrhoids like this picture, these 2. Plus, you can also see there is a separate about 3 to 4 centimeter away from the anus. There is another separate swelling. There is a small opening also there. And this is the picture you would get in a fistula patient. This is the external opening of the fistula, and the internal opening would be under the skin from somewhere inside the anal canal. So this is a fistula, this is a fissure and a hemorrhoid on inspection of the anal canal. The previous picture was from the outside, and this is a section of the anal canal, a sagittal kind of section, in which I would try to explain what is the difference between a piles, a fissure, and a fistula. The fissure is the easiest one. Rectum, anal canal, and there is a longitudinal tear in the anal canal mucosa. This is called anal fissure. This is the anal fissure. And if you see the fistula, fistula is, by definition, fistula is an abnormal communication between two epithelial or endothelial surfaces. That means for a fistula to occur, there should be two openings. One opening in this scenario is here, just outside the anal opening onto the skin. And there is this all the way long tunnel going. And the other internal opening is lying in the anal canal at the level of the dentate line, where the valves of Morgagni were there. So this is called a fistula. Two openings, one external opening on the skin, internal opening in the anal canal, and they are communicating. So abnormal communication between two epithelial or endothelial surface. This is an epithelial surface and endothelial surface. So this is an anal fistula. This is how it will be on this section. But if you see it on the from outside, you can only see the external opening. This is the external opening. And this external opening is visible here. And internal opening is not visible in that section. You need to do some proctoscopy or something else, endoscopy, to see the internal opening. So this is a fistula. And there is another picture for this is there is an ulcer in the rectum. This can be some malignant ulcer or whatever. And in this, he has also drawn a fistula again here, this external opening here, and then internal opening here. This is the track of the fistula in between. And the left side picture is the hemorrhoids or piles, in which if you see the anal cushion area, this area, it is swollen, filled with some blood vessels and engorged. This is an internal hemorrhoid. And this area is an external hemorrhoid. This is how it will be when you look from inside. So now I think we'll talk about hemorrhoids first, and then gradually we'll move down and see how much we can cover in this lecture. Hemorrhoids. This is something really, really common. And a lot of people in their lifetime will experience some kind of problem, which is hemorrhoidal problem. And what is the definition of the hemorrhoid? This is important to remember, because in your exam, the examiner often asks you, can you define hemorrhoids? So you need to know that hemorrhoids are actually engorged or prolapsed anal cushions. So I can again tell you the definition. Hemorrhoids are enlarged or prolapsed anal cushions, and when they become symptomatic. So symptomatic enlargement and or distal displacement of anal cushions. This is called hemorrhoids. This area is anal cushion, and when it becomes enlarged and distally displaced, comes down and becomes symptomatic, it is called hemorrhoids. Anal cushions are normally present in everybody. And the anal cushion means the mucosa and the submucosa is swollen at the junction of the rectum and anal canal. And the internal vessels are a little bit engorged, but they are normally present. And their function is actually probably for the continence of the air, so that you cannot pars flatus without your consent. So it is the function. But once these anal cushions become engorged and enlarged and they displace downwards, they become symptomatic. They may leak blood from here, they may cause pain, they may become thrombosed, they may be strangulated, whatever, and then they are called hemorrhoids. So what is the actual prevalence of the hemorrhoids? This is very difficult to know because not all the patients would come to you due to various reasons. And in our culture, avoiding for the private parts problems, avoiding doctors or the practitioners is quite common. People will not visit a doctor because they think it is, they feel ashamed actually to tell them about this kind of problem, that they have some anorectal issue or they have some urological issue or they have something else. So it's difficult to tell the exact prevalence, but it is quite common. And because of this reason, a lot of people will do some kind of self-medication. Somebody would tell them that I had a hemorrhoid attack and I used this cream or that tablet or that medicine. And they will do that, which is actually very harmful. So what we'll talk about is the pathophysiology, what are the clinical features, and then this classification of hemorrhoid is quite important. And the question is always classify hemorrhoids into different grades, and then how will you treat various grades? So this is very important. And the complication of the hemorrhoids and what treatment options are available. And also if you do some kind of surgery like hemorrhoidectomy, what could be the complications of hemorrhoidectomy? So we'll talk about this hemorrhoid under these headings. So we'll start with the pathophysiology and risk factor. As I told you about the anal cushion, the anal cushion are normally present, but with the feces, they may slide down a bit and then they retract back to their normal position. But if they slide down quite a lot, or they come down out of the anal canal, they may not retract properly and they will become stretched and enlarged. So this can be one reason, the sliding anal cushion. The other reason could be in this anal cushion, there is a hemorrhoidal plexus, which is formed by the AV communication between hemorrhoidal arteries and the veins. It is the superior rectal, middle rectal, and inferior rectal arteries and veins which form a hemorrhoidal plexus. And the increased flow in this hemorrhoidal plexus can also be the one reason. There may be some abnormality in the vessel wall, which can be the one reason. There may be some local tissue inflammation. Sometimes the rectal mucosa is a little prolapsed or redundant and it can come out. So these all can be the factor. The other risk factors could be any increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, like which can occur in pregnancy. The venous return will be blocked or reduced, or pressure would increase in the veins and the hemorrhoidal plexus may swollen. So this is the pregnancy. Similarly, obesity may be a risk factor due to multiple reasons. Increased intra-abdominal pressure can be due to constipation, can be due to straining a lot, and can be due to lifting heavy weights and all these things, and doing gym and exercise and bodybuilding. Also, if you are using food which is spicy, which is low in fiber, and which is sort of a junk food, so it will lead to constipation, and it would lead to more straining, and it would lead to the increase in intra-abdominal pressure, and which can cause actually the hemorrhoids. And alcohol intake is a separate risk factor, not related to all these things. So these are the risk factor and some kind of pathophysiology. You can see in this picture how hemorrhoids bleed. If we start from here, top left, this is rectum, this is anal canal, this is anorectal junction, And these blue things are the anal cushions at the anorectal junctions. It is written here vascular pads, but this is actually anal cushion. These are the sphincters outside. So these are anal cushions, and in defecation, this sphincter is relaxed. These muscles are relaxed, and the anal canal dilates, and it actually sort of everts out. And these anal cushions, they come down with the passage of the feces. And when the feces are passing, they actually are scratching on the mucosa over the anal cushion here. And this, because of this scratching, if the feces are really hard and constipated stool, this scratching actually can lead to abrasion of the anal cushion mucosa. So, and they are already down. This anal canal is sort of everted, they're already down. So bleeding may start here. What will happen once the stool passes down? The blood will come after the stool. So patient of hemorrhoid generally tells you that he or she has bleeding after she or he passes the stool, and this blood would be very bright, fresh blood, because it just started bleeding after the passage. So bright red color blood passed just after the stool is most likely a hemorrhoidal bleed. And once this stool is passed, normally what will happen, this anal cushion will retract back upward into its normal position, and the sphincter will tighten and close the anal canal. There won't be any bleeding there. But sometimes the cushion remains downward in a prolapsed position, especially when they have increased in length, or they have dragged down quite for a significant length. Then they will stay down there and may not retract properly. So this is called prolapsed hemorrhoids, and they may continue to bleed, and this will lead to more swelling and more pain and strangulation and everything. So this is the mechanism of hemorrhoidal bleeding. So we can classify hemorrhoids by two ways. One classification, initially you need to know whether it is an internal hemorrhoid or an external hemorrhoid. The internal hemorrhoid means hemorrhoids which are actually coming from the anal cushion and from inside of the anal canal, from the anorectal junction. These are called internal hemorrhoids. These are colored pink here, pink color. These are internal hemorrhoids. Similarly here. And there can be some external hemorrhoid, which is actually not the prolapsed or engorged anal cushion. It is a small hematoma in the subcutaneous tissue just proximal to the anal opening. And this is because of during straining, there may be small bleed, and this bleed will accumulate and in the form of a hematoma just around the anal canal. This is called external hemorrhoids, this thing. And sometimes these two will be there together, internal and external hemorrhoid. These are called mixed hemorrhoids. So external hemorrhoid is visible like this. Internal hemorrhoids, unless they are very big and prolapsed, they are not visible. You got my point? Internal hemorrhoids are not visible until they are of stage second degree, third degree, or fourth degree. First degree internal hemorrhoids are not visible, and only external hemorrhoid may be visible. This may be an external hemorrhoid, but this may be at the lower end of an internal hemorrhoid, or it may be an interno-external hemorrhoid. Okay. So now we'll talk about the degree of internal hemorrhoid. This is more often asked in the exam by the examiner. What are the degree of the internal hemorrhoids? So it's better to remember them by the degree, not by the stage, but the stage can be used as well. This is first degree hemorrhoid, second degree hemorrhoid, third degree hemorrhoid, and fourth degree hemorrhoid. This classification is done according to patient's history and your examination. If patient tells you that I have fresh bleeding per rectum, but there is nothing prolapsing out of the anus. So there is no prolapse but bleeding. This is called first degree hemorrhoids. Second degree hemorrhoid is there is bleeding, but there is also prolapse during defecation, and this prolapse reduces spontaneously back to the rectum after defecation is finished. So prolapse which is reduced spontaneously. This is second degree. The third degree is there is prolapse of the hemorrhoid, but it does not reduce spontaneously. Patient has to manually push it back inside the anal canal. So prolapsing hemorrhoid which are manually reduced. This is stage 3 or third degree. And fourth degree are that the hemorrhoids are so big that they even cannot be pushed back manually inside anymore. It is the last stage that they have become so big that they can't go inside. They stay outside prolapsed all the time. So first degree is the start when there is no prolapse. Second degree is prolapse during defecation, but it goes back automatically. Third degree is prolapse during defecation, but it does not go automatically, but patient can push it back inside and reduce it. And fourth degree is that they are so big that they actually could not be pushed back or reduced spontaneously. So these are the 4 degrees. I hope you remember that. First degree is bleeding only, no prolapse. Second degree prolapse, which is spontaneously reduced. Third degree prolapse, which is manually reduced. Fourth degree prolapse, which is not reduced. Okay. And the treatment also depends on to the grading or staging of the hemorrhoid. First degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree. So what is visible on the patient on inspection of the patient? This looks like a normal examination of the anal canal. This is 12 o'clock anterior. This is 6 o'clock on the back, patient in the left lateral. And when you see there is no prolapsing hemorrhoid, normal external appearance. But upon history, patient would be telling that I have fresh bleeding per rectum, although there is no prolapse. So you have to do a proctoscopic examination to see the internal hemorrhoid because they are very small and still inside. So for first degree, PR may be normal, only proctoscopy could tell you that there is hemorrhoid. On the second degree hemorrhoid, there would be a little bit of prolapse, but it goes back after the defecation. And if you see the third degree, it is again relatively bigger than the second degree, and the fourth degree is quite big and it remains permanently outside. So this is fourth degree hemorrhoid. So after the classification, I think we need to know the position of the hemorrhoids. Position of the hemorrhoid. There are three classical position of the hemorrhoids. That's okay. There are three classical position of the hemorrhoids. If you see on this picture, 3 o'clock, the 7 o'clock, and the 11 o'clock position. 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock. If you see it here, there are actually more than 3. How many there are? There are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are 5 hemorrhoids in this patient. So what we can see here is this is 12 o'clock. This is 6 o'clock here. So this is 1 o'clock. This is 3 o'clock. This is 5 o'clock. This is 7 o'clock. And this is 11 o'clock. So there are 3 classical hemorrhoids: 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. These 3 are the classical position of the hemorrhoids, or they are also called primary position of the hemorrhoids. So if somebody asks you what are the primary positions of the hemorrhoids, They are 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock and 11 o'clock position. And the other hemorrhoids are secondary position of the hemorrhoids. This is 1 o'clock and this is 5 o'clock. It's difficult to explain to you here why there are three primary, these are the primary position, but I can try to explain to you. Actually, the hemorrhoids are dilated anal cushion, and the anal cushions are dilated mainly where the superior rectal artery is present. So if you follow inferior mesenteric artery coming from the aorta and it is giving left colic artery, sigmoidal branches, then it will continue down as a superior rectal artery. Superior rectal artery will be divided into two branches. One is the right branch, the other one is the left branch. And the left branch continues down and it forms the 3 o'clock position cushion in the anal, and it becomes it anastomosis and makes anastomosis with the middle rectal and inferior rectal in the anal cushion at 3 o'clock. This is the left superior rectal artery, left superior. And on the right side, the rectal artery, right rectal divides into two. One runs anteriorly, the other one runs posteriorly. So these two are the anterior and posterior branches of the right superior rectal artery, and they form anastomosis at 11 o'clock anal cushion and 7 o'clock anal cushion with middle and inferior rectal artery. So that's why most of the time the hemorrhoids will start from this area, because the superior rectal artery branches 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Later on, gradually, when they become bigger, the other hemorrhoids may come into existence. These are the secondary hemorrhoids. Okay, so I think you can see that. Now we'll move forward. The positions I told you, the classification I told you, pathophysiology I told you. Little bit more. Let's see how much we can do. The complications of the hemorrhoid. So what can happen? Of course, the commonest symptom of the hemorrhoid is bleeding per rectum, fresh blood. The patient may lose a lot of blood and can have symptomatic or asymptomatic anemia. We have seen patients with hemoglobin of 2 or 3 grams per deciliter, even in Avicenna Hospital, only because of the hemorrhoids. They were bleeding since long and they were having this problem since long. This is one complication. The other complication, which is also very bad, you can see here, once hemorrhoid prolapses and they are not going back, unable to go back, especially in 3rd degree or 4th degree hemorrhoids, they are actually gripped by the external anal sphincter. And anal sphincter actually squeezes the blood supply of the hemorrhoid and they become ischemic and then become strangulated. Later on, this ischemia or strangulation can lead to thrombosis of the hemorrhoid, ulceration of the hemorrhoid, gangrene of the hemorrhoid, and there can be some infection or suppuration in the hemorrhoid. So these are the various complications of the hemorrhoid. The complications are more common. I will answer at the end. I can see a few questions, but I will answer just in 5 minutes. Okay. So these are the complications of the hemorrhoid. And the complication is more common when the hemorrhoid becomes bigger, like in 3rd degree and 4th degree. 1st degree and 2nd degree, the main complications is actually anemia and some itching and pruritus in the perianal area. So if you see here, if you see this, so maybe a small hemorrhoid to start with, an external one, and this is a very big hemorrhoid in the same area which has prolapsed outside, and it is not going back in and it is strangulated. And now you can see some thrombosis at various parts and some ischemia, some redness, and this is all complicated. Okay. So I think it's already 12:50. I would answer a few questions. We have finished up to the complications. And next time, I think the remaining part is the treatment. So we'll discuss the hemorrhoidectomy in detail. and then we'll go on to discuss the fistula and fissure. So now I would like you to ask me some questions and I can answer your question. I can see one question from Abu Bakr. He said that how can we question about prolapse from the patient, and stage 4 prolapse is emergency? Prolapse is an emergency, of course, until it becomes symptomatic. Sometimes prolapse is not very symptomatic. Patient would say that I have some hanging hemorrhoids or prolapse hemorrhoids since long, but the chances of becoming an emergency or symptomatic are very high because the prolapse hemorrhoid would be strangulated easily, they would be necrosed easily, they would bleed easily. So all the complications are quite likely to occur in 4th degree hemorrhoids. So it's kind of a semi-emergency. And how can we question about prolapse from the patient? You would ask the patient that patient would come and tell you 2 symptoms of the hemorrhoid. One symptom is, Dr. Sahab, I have bleeding per rectum. Bleeding per rectum, this is one symptom. Remember, hemorrhoids are painless until they become strangulated or there is some complication. So an uncomplicated hemorrhoid is always painless bleeding. So most of the time patient will present with painless bleeding. And the next question you would ask, okay, what is the color of your blood? So patient would likely, if it is hemorrhoid, the patient would tell that bright red color blood comes after I pass a stool. So now you would like to determine the degree of the hemorrhoid by questioning. So you would ask the patient, is there something coming out of the anus as well? कुछ पखाने के साथ कोई गोश्त या बोटी भी बाहर निकलती है? You would ask like that. And patient would, or some people in Punjabi would say, कोई मोका भी बाहर आंदा है? Patient would tell you, yes, there is something coming out of the rectum with stool. And then at the same time you would ask, फिर जो मोका बाहर आता है वो खुद ही अंदर चला जाता है या आपको उसे अंदर डालना पड़ता है? Patient says that it reduces spontaneously, वो खुद ही अंदर चला जाता है, that means it is 2nd degree hemorrhoid. But if patient says, no डॉक्टर साहब पहले तो खुद ही अंदर चला जाता सी, ਹੁਣ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਂਗਲੀ ਨਾਲ ਅੰਦਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ, that means it is 3rd degree hemorrhoid. And sometimes patient might say that ਡਾਕਟਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਹੁਣ ਇੰਨਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਅੰਦਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਉਹ ਬਾਹਰ ਹੀ ਲਮਕੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਮੋਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਬੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਬਵਾਸੀਰ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਬਾਹਰ ਹੀ ਲਮਕੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ. I hope I have answered your questions. Okay, that's fine. So you got your answer. Any more questions regarding this? Because I think we'll finish here and we'll go on to discuss the treatment and the complication in the next lecture. So I will wait for a couple of minutes so that somebody, if wants to type any question, he can type the question and then I can answer the question. वैसे भी गला खुश्क हो गया बोल बोल के, and I can't see anybody, so it's very difficult. Need to have some reply. Anybody wants to ask something? Okay, another question. Okay, there are a few more questions. Another question is there any chance that fissure don't have any external opening? Fissure, if you remember by definition, we'll discuss in next lecture, fissure is actually a longitudinal ulcer in the anus or anal canal. So the openings, fissure hasn't got any external or internal opening. It is just like जैसे आपके कई दफ़ा आपने देखा होगा आपके होंठों पे कट आ जाते हैं लॉन्गिट्यूडनल oral cavity, होंठ पे. Similarly, a longitudinal cut or tear or laceration in the anus is called fissure. The openings are actually a fistula. External opening and internal opening are a fistula. So by definition, if there is no, there should be two openings of a fistula. If there is no second opening, it is not a fistula. Then it could be called a sinus. Sinus has got only one opening. So your question, if I understand, you're asking about fistula. So fistula should always have two openings, and sinus has got one opening. Okay, I think that's clear now. And somebody asked me about what is the ratio of occurrence among male and female. It is more common in female. Exact prevalence, as I told you, is difficult to tell because females are very shy and they won't come to you. But it is more common in females because uh, of the pregnancy and labor and purpurum area and more constipation and all these things. So we see more females with hemorrhoids as compared to males. You understood my answer regarding fistula opening, Abu Bakr? Okay. Okay then, thank you very much for your patience listening. I'll see you inshallah with the remaining part of the lecture, maybe next week or after. Thank you. No, thank you. लिखिए बंद करिए.